So this is very interesting to see their play, how they are, it's like a contract, the two who are one, they are having with each other. And he allows the play to happen by offering his breast to the workings of Prakriti, to the workings of time. Since he is immutable and cannot be destroyed, that's why the stability allows the play of Prakriti to go on and on and on, no matter how kind of severe it may get at times. And our lives are the quivering theaters of the play of Prakriti, all the experiences, happenings of life, at times really worst tragedies, traumas, all that, shaking that happens in our lives, that too, and also at a global level, at a larger level, all that is allowed since the Purusha says yes to it. He allows all that to happen. And there is a purpose to that allowance also. So here, his silence is his signature to her deeds. In the execution of her drama's scheme, in her fancies of moment and its mood, in the march of this obvious ordinary world, where all is deep and strange to the eyes that see. And there we were marveling over the beauty that is, the intelligent beauty that is present in this universe, which is something beyond the appearances also the appearances, but also beyond the appearances. So a little flower, a little insect, just a little grain of sand, with how much of intelligence, delicacy, and precision everything is made, where all is deep and strange to the eyes that see. Otherwise, to the eyes which are so lost, it can just appear very mundane. One doesn't even pay attention to it. But the moment a flower falls in front of you and you stop to look at a flower, we see that how beautiful, full of grace, beauty, and innocence that flower is. And exactitude also, every little creature, every little thing in this universe is so exact, so precise. Looking at dark sea creatures to, flying birds, little insects. Nature's common forms are marvel wefts. So this was what was very, very beautiful. And this is how we go on in our life. Things sweet and bitter, magnificent and mean, things terrible and beautiful and divine. All these are happenings in our lives. And through this, the drama continues. And through that, the Prakriti goes on with her play, which is allowed by the Purusha, for this cosmic progression to happen. Her events that weave the texture of our lives. When we look back at the events that happened in our lives, even individual lives, and also at a global scale, how each thing exactly fits into each other, as if when it's happening, when it's happening at that time, it may appear really out of place. But when you look at the larger picture, we exactly, in wisdom, we can say that it needed to happen at that point of time, because this was the learning for me through that happening. So all this is the process of Prakriti, nature, in her movement. Since she has to allow the involved consciousness, soul consciousness, to now grow forward. So this was where we stopped last. We'll take up new lines. So Riddhi and Swapna also have joined. Welcome, Riddhi, Swapna. We are just beginning with the new lines.
Hi, Monica.
Yeah,
Thank
hi.
you.
Yeah. So anyone, either Swapna or Riddhi, because since you have not read yet, if you can maybe read these lines, any one of you.
Okay. His consciousness is a babe upon her knees. His being a field of her vast Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'll read again. His consciousness is a babe upon her knees, his being a field of her vast experiment. Her endless space is the playground of his thoughts.
Yeah, thank you.
His consciousness is a babe upon her knees, his being a field of her vast experiment. Her endless space is the playground of his thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. So the soul consciousness manifests or appears as a child who is allowing himself to be nurtured by the nature mother, the divine mother. That's the beauty. And this, when I was going through this, it also, I was also reminded of how Krishna, Sri Krishna, the Lord himself, he allowed himself to be this little innocent child full of, his divine knowledge and infinity. And yet he allows himself to be nurtured by Yashoda, for example. So this soul consciousness appears like a child upon the knees of the mother nature, the divine mother. His being a field of her vast experiment. So she is allowed to experiment while the soul consciousness is hidden behind all the matter and the inconscience. So Prakriti, Mother Nature, is allowed to do this vast experiment, endless experiment, how we started being a stone, then started to have this unicellular single-celled organisms with a little bit of movement, and then to plant, and then further complex forms, and then many forms have now been eliminated, like dinosaurs and many extinct creatures which do not exist now. So I think this was by the mother, maybe her commentaries on Life Divine, where I read this, that she shares that when the mother nature makes something like this, does this vast experiment of life, she is very abundant and she is spending her raw material very, very leisurely. Like she doesn't bother if she creates something and it doesn't turn out to be well. But when she is creating, then she puts all her raw material, all her energy and force and exactitude in that creation. Now, if later on it doesn't fit the whole scheme, then she abandons the project. So she's full of abundance. So this vast experiment that she has to do for the cosmic progression of consciousness, his being is the field. His immutable being, which is involved in the matter. Whatever is involved, only that can evolve out. So our soul consciousness, or this hidden light, has been involved in the matter. And that's why evolution can happen, because how will evolution happen if there is nothing which wants to come out? What is the point of evolution? So the very point of evolution is that there is some hidden potential which is hiding behind the matter, hiding behind the mind, life, and physical consciousness, which has to evolve out in its full radiance through the movements of nature. So his being is a field of her vast experiment. He has allowed it. Her endless space is the playground of his thoughts. And she also provides a lot of space for him to have all these endless possibilities. Where is a thought arising from? A thought is arising from that consciousness itself, absolute ocean of consciousness. What we also many a times we call it as a void, a deep void, a void which is not a dumb void, but a void full of potential, pregnant with potential. So it all comes from that source and then goes back into that source, just like wave comes from an ocean and goes back to an ocean. So she provides the play of Prakriti, the forms of Prakriti. She also provides an endless possibilities in manifestation, so that he can exercise out his thoughts through nature. Yeah. So anybody at any point of time, if you have anything to add on, please unmute and share in between. So I'll just move on, and you keep sharing whatever, whenever you have anything to share. Yeah, we'll take up these lines. Anyone who feels ready? Swapna, you want to read?
Binds to knowledge of the shapes of time and the creative error of limiting mind, and chance that wears the rigid face of fate, and her sport of death and pain and nescience, his changed and struggling immortality.
Yeah. She binds to knowledge of the shapes of time and the creative error of limiting mind and chance that we are. So these are how she binds. Binds what? It comes in the last line. His changed and struggling immortality. So the one who is immortal, the one who cannot be bound by any limitation, the infinite himself, allows the nature to bind, to limit his immortality. And these are the ways through which he finds himself bound. What are the ways? She binds his changed and struggling immortality to knowledge of shapes in time. The study of subjects, the study of little forms and pieces of life. So that knowledge which is eternal, that wisdom which is eternal, that consciousness which is light itself, that now has become so limited that it is taking the way of studying these little forms and creatures, so that one can arrive at a full knowing. So this is how the nature limits the consciousness, absolute consciousness. She binds to knowledge of the shapes of time, things that are fleeting, things that appear and disappear in time, and the creative error of limiting mind. So this is one of the ways in which the soul consciousness feels itself bound. The creative error of limiting mind. All of us have a mind. Human being is a mental being. And Sri Aurobindo calls limiting mind a creative error. So it is an error. It is a limitation put on the infinite, but it's a very creative one. So that's the beauty, that it has a lot of creativity, even in those limits in which it finds itself. So the limiting mind is, we all have seen how creative we are as human beings, even with the limited minds that we have. Look at the laptops and phones and buildings and beautiful pieces of architecture. So many bridges and buildings which are so magnificent, so aesthetically beautiful also. So this all is the creativity coming out of the limiting mind itself. Yet, who is limited? The infinite himself is limited through this limiting mind. But there is a purpose, because he wants to taste these limits. He wants to taste what can be done through limits. Because if I am limitless and I don't know what is being limited, then there is hardly any fun. And when I was reading this, I was also reminding myself of these games that we used to play as kids. Either langdi tang, where you bring one leg up and just run on one leg and try to catch the people running around, your friends running around. So you have two legs, but you limit yourself by the use of only one leg. Why? Because you want to exercise it and you want to have the fun of playing like that. And just like that, the games like, where you put a blindfold on your eyes, and then you have to sense what kind of objects these are, or maybe find your friends. So you have eyes which are functional, and yet you put these limits on yourself so that you can have the fun of subtle sensing and also recognizing friends when you can't see. So through these processes of limiting the infinite consciousness, there is a purpose being served. And the purpose is of refinement of even the senses of nature. how slowly it evolves, and gradually people who are, for example, maybe physically a bit challenged here and there, we see that how in them the other faculties of hearing or tasting or something, they get really developed to a larger extent, which is not common to normal people who have all the senses functioning. So by limiting, I am actually propelling. For example, if I'm running only on one leg, although I have the other leg also with bent behind, then that one leg is first of all having the fun of play, and secondly is also getting strengthened during the play, which is not possible much if I use both the legs all the time. So limiting also serves, I believe, a purpose. So these games were coming to my mind when this, when I was going through these lines. And chance that wears the rigid face of fate. This we have really encountered many times in Savitri, how chance happenings in our lives turn out to be, first of all, they appear like rigid, that ye to hona hi tha, this had to happen. But we know also through many hints and clues that at any point of time, at any moment of time, we have a free will. So it's not fixed. It depends on the state of consciousness I am in, and that will decide the next course of action. So it may appear like chance and very fixed and rigid, and it may appear very limited, that this had to happen. But no, it had to happen because I had that state of mind in that moment. Else, any infinite number of possibilities were also possible in that very moment. So this is how nature limits, binds the soul consciousness, which itself is eternal and absolutely free, and that too serves a purpose. So she limits by knowledge of shapes of time, knowledge of fleeting objects, limits by creative error of limiting mind, limits by chance, by chance happenings that wears the rigid face of fate, and her sport of death and pain and nescience, and how as mortal beings we are, we feel limited, that okay, this is the life I have, I don't have much time. But we also have a knowing, many of us also have a knowing that we are immortal beings, but we feel limited by the extent of mortal life that we have. So although the soul goes on forever, but mortality appears to limit, that this physical body can only be have for these many years and not beyond that. So she limits the soul consciousness by the sport of death, pain, and nescience, that we don't know. We don't know. We are almighty, divine, and yet we don't know that. Ignorance, absolute nescience. So this is how the immortality finds itself bound through the works of nature. And again, as we have been sharing again, that this has a purpose in the play of this cosmic Leela. Yeah, anything to add on? Anyone wants to add any reflection here? Okay, so if not, let's go on. Anyone who wants to read these lines?
May I read, madam?
Yeah, please.
His soul is subtle, atom in a mass. His substance a material for her works. His spirit survives amid the death of things. He climbs to eternity through being's gaps. He is carried by her from night to deathless light. Thank you, madam.
Yeah, thank you. His soul is a subtle atom in a mass. This physics aspect is also very interesting and intriguing, and has been intriguing physicists for a long time. That how we thought that the building blocks of anything is atom, and how we now know that it doesn't stop at the atom. It goes on and on and on, and still they have been trying to find a God particle, the absolute particle, which is the building blocks of everything, but they have not been able to. And I doubt if we are able to find the God particle. Why? Because it's somehow it appears very, very contraindicative, because anything that can be found will be a little object, right? I can find a bottle, I can find a, maybe a phone, I can find a laptop, but I cannot find or come, just like we come to an object, I cannot touch and grasp the divine. That would be really become like contraindicative, because divine, who cannot be fathomed, who cannot be known, through whose presence we know everything, how can that come into my hold? So it's really amazing that how much money also, I'm sure it has a lot purpose also, because through all these experiments only then we realize that this cannot be done, or maybe what is the, maybe then after that our attention turns within, to the subject who is knowing rather than to the object known. So everything has a purpose. I'm sure it has a purpose. So his soul, the consciousness, that absolute consciousness, appears like a subtle atom. His soul is a subtle atom in a mass. Now, mass is matter. It's like solid, rigid, right? And that is how he hides himself in the rigidity. Although that rigidity is just an appearing rigidity, it appears to be rigid, but when we go closer, we see that it's not that rigid. Just like when we go close to an electron, we see that the moment we want to touch it, it becomes a wave. So it appears like a particle, but then it is suddenly changes into a wave. So just like we look at our bodies, it appears like to have a very solid boundary, but when you go closer, you see that where is the boundary? All the time your boundary of the body is in continuous exchange with the atmosphere around. So where is the boundary? Yeah. So this mass, this solidity that appears to be, he hides. His soul is a subtle atom, subtle, that which is not that tangible in a mass. And also I would draw our attention to our own individual lives, because when I look at my thought, thought appears to be very real. It appears to have a very solid kind of a character, that yes, this is what I believe in, and this is true, so as if it's very solid, and I make it more solid by thinking over it. I kind of think over it again and again, like past events and happenings. I revive them in my mind again and again. I put more fuel into them, and I make it more and more real, my hallucinations, in my life. Just like matter is not a reality in the sense of, that it's solidity, that it's not as solid as it appears. Just like that, thought is also not solid. Thought is also not as rigid as we make it. And that's why it's very, very beautiful experience not to cling to our thoughts, just to see them as bubbles appearing and disappearing on the surface of water. Because when I do that, I really can taste that inner freedom when I'm not clinging to my opinions, ideas, and whatever stories that are in my head. Just giving it a loose space that yeah, this can happen. I don't know, maybe this is true, but yeah, there are many, many possibilities. So not saying that whatever is appearing in my thought has to be true. So keeping it a lot of breathing space, so to say. And when we do that, then we really, all of us can taste that inner freedom and lightness and joy in our own self, when we do not cling to our thoughts as so solid. His substance, a material for her works. Consciousness is the substance of all that is. For the moment, it appears like matter is the substance, because all the time we are focused on the matter, just like all the times we are focused on the thoughts, feelings, sensations. You know? Just like that, we miss the presence of consciousness totally. You know, we ignore the presence of consciousness, which becomes conscious of a thought, through which I know a thought, through which I know a feeling. Totally miss it. While that is the only substance why I can know a thought, why I can know what I am feeling. But the knowing part, I totally miss it. And in that missing, my suffering continues. But when I detach and then when I know myself as the knowing, immediately in that moment, I am not suffering anymore. When I take the stance as consciousness, as the knowing, and not as the thought stream. So his substance, this consciousness, is the substance, is the material for her works. And again, you know, just to reiterate the example that I use often, you know, if we take consciousness as the screen on which the movie is happening, and you go closer to the screen. Now, if you touch the screen, imagine that there is a landscape appearing on the screen, and you go closer, closer, closer. You won't find a tree there. No, you won't find a mountain there. You will find the screen there, because screen is the substance of the movie. So the more close we go to the nature of our thoughts and see how bubbly they are, they come and go away, come and go away. But where are they going away? Where are they coming from? Where are they originating from? And that ocean of consciousness is our true self. From where they appear and back into that they disappear. So this is the substance. This is our truth. His spirit survives amid the death of things. You know, all of us can, you know, vouch for this. So many difficulties we go through as human beings. You know, so much pain, death and loss of loved ones. But the spirit survives. Human spirit, you know, if not for the Shiva's consciousness within, we won't be able to survive so much of hardship. People who have suffered Nazi concentration camps, you know, even they, you know, writing beautiful stories full of human spirit, kindness, compassion, even in those difficult times. So this is the spirit, this is the Shiva's consciousness that makes everything go on and on and on, and nothing shatters completely. His spirit survives amid the death of things. And when we leave the body, you know, some of us may be aware when we leave the body, drop the body dead, the journey continues. You know, this is just a padhav, this is just a station. We don't have to build such concrete reality here, because life is a preparation for death. Death is a preparation for another life. So are we preparing for death? Right now, as I am living, am I preparing for death, which can arrive anytime? You know, I may think I have 10 or 20 or 30 more years to live. Who knows? I have even the 5 seconds to live. Right? So am I preparing? Am I living like that? That if today I have to drop the body dead, I won't have any regrets that I wasted my life, you know, into something which was really trivial and not worth attending. So I think this is very important. Personally, for me, I remind myself often so that the day can be spent well, you know, so that the moments we can know where my thought is going. Would I still be thinking these thoughts if I have to die today? Would I still be absorbed in such melancholy and stories of my head from the past and worries of the future if today was the last day? So where would I be absorbed if today is the last day? And there I should absorb myself, you know, in the right place, in the right consciousness. So this journey of the soul consciousness goes on even if after form changes, you know, one body drops dead, the next body appears. Goes on and on. Just like in physics, we say energy cannot be destroyed. It can just be changed from one form to another. So this energy that we are, force, consciousness force that we are, it cannot be destroyed. But are we living like that? Because I have to know it consciously. Am I living as a body, or am I living as that consciousness which cannot be destroyed? Because that will make the future happenings, predict. That will actually, my life today will actually predict the future happenings. I have the free will. He climbs to eternity through being's gaps. Now, these are the gaps. When there is a death, when there is a dropping of the body cover, and then there is some time, there is some gap. That decides where I am going to take a birth, if I am going to take a birth further. If I am to utilize that gap, which happens after death, I have to start now. Because if I do not know my true nature today, then when I die, nothing miraculous is going to happen that I will self-realize myself and hence be able to consciously take a rebirth. That's not going to happen. So the journey has to start today so that I can utilize the gaps also. And also in these gaps, it is said that the soul consciousness is assimilating experiences of the life. For example, a life has been lived and now there is a gap after death. In that gap, the soul consciousness assimilates the richness of experiences through which the psychic being grows. This assimilation is what makes the psychic being grow and mature and ripen. So I think it's very, very important and crucial for all of us who are here today and all of us who are on this journey to remind ourselves, because we forget. Sometimes our relationships and what people are saying to me, it becomes so heavy on me that I forget what I am here for. But when I remind myself again and again, then whenever, even if an external event is happening, then I don't take it in a way of being a victim or, being the center of the attraction or in a sense of the ego. I take it just as a means to progress. Okay, what is this experience making me learn? Just that. Focused on the essence of the experience, not focused on people who are involved in the experience, because that is what entangles us again and again. So these gaps and also the life has to be utilized. And this is how the soul consciousness grows further in its kind of magnanimity. He is carried by her from night to deathless light. So the soul consciousness comes to the matter, takes a material form, born in forgetfulness, ignorance of true nature, born in amnesia, full of dumbness of matter. And slowly through all these experiences that we have all been through, it grows on and comes forward and is able to shine its radiance, in front, rather than being hidden in the matter and life and mind. So this is how the nature evolves or nurtures the consciousness that is a babe on her knees. Beautiful, beautiful lines, really. Yeah, anyone who wants to add on, please go ahead.
Really beautiful, Monica. Totally. Yeah. No
Yeah.
words. Yeah. And when you are telling that conscious rebirth, today I also dwell upon it for some time. How it will be, without, realizing this, if one dies, what is the use of again and again taking birth and entering into the cycle of birth and death? Yes, that was going on in me actually.
Yeah.
When you are telling this conscious rebirth, really, it is very beautiful. Thank you, Monica. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, anyone else? Any reflection to share? Anything to add on? Yeah, okay, then let's go on. Let's stop here. Yeah. Anyone who feels ready to read?
Okay, I can go ahead. This grand surrender is his free will's gift. His pure transcendent force submits to hers in the mystery of her cosmic ignorance, in the insoluble riddle of her play. This grand surrender is his free will's gift, his pure transcendent force submits to her in the mystery of her cosmic ignorance, in the insoluble riddle of her play. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Raviji, did you also unmute? Because I thought you were speaking, but your voice was not reaching us. Is your mic okay? You want to say hello or something here in the middle? Yeah, Raviji, say something. Okay, you're not audible. I don't know if you're speaking or not, but we can't hear you.
Okay,
Hello?
I am trying to speak, but
Okay,
that's the
now
problem.
I can hear you.
Okay.
So
I
maybe
think-
after this you can go ahead with the lines later. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Riddhi. So let's go on. This grand surrender is his free will's gift. Now, why will I be able to surrender? I'll be able to surrender only because I have this free will. If I had no free will, how would I choose to surrender? So that's the beauty, that although he's bounded, he's bound by nature, by the creative error of the mind and all the mind vitality, the physical mortality, he's bound, he's limited. But this grand surrender which he has done to nature mother or Prakriti herself is his free will's gift. He can do that surrender because he is almighty. He has this free will at his disposal. He is all free. So whenever he wants to be bound, he can be bound. And whenever he wants to utilize the free will, he can say, okay, now I choose something else. So through his free will, he surrenders to the movements of nature. He allows the mother nature to do the cosmic management, as we read earlier, and becomes like a supernumerary, not visible at all, participant in this play, in the Leela. This grand surrender that he has done, the Purusha, the consciousness, absolute consciousness, has become the vast field which is not visible, it's not tangible field, so that the movements of nature can progress. This grand surrender is his free will's gift. His pure transcendent force submits to hers. So the consciousness that all of us are submits to the consciousness of Prakriti, movement of thought, movement of feeling, movement of sensing, perceiving. I allow myself to be lost in the thought. I allow myself to be lost in the feeling. I allow myself to be lost in sense perceptions. There is no one else who is doing it. So many a times people say that there is no divine, and if we actually begin to debate it would be really amazing, where Sri Aurobindo also calls it thesis antithesis. So you pick up a statement and you pick an opposite statement. So one says God exists, the other person says there is no God, or the divine does not exist. And slowly, if we debate over it, we will actually arrive at the similar conclusion. We'll be able to synthesize it if we do it rightly. Because we are divine in nature, but we don't say that because we are ignorant also parallelly. So who is Brahm? We are Brahm. But right now, the way we are not Brahm. We are just Prakriti. Because we are lost in the movements of Prakriti. So the consciousness, the all transcending consciousness, the Brahman consciousness, it allows itself to submit to the force of thought, feeling, sense, perception, or to the force of Prakriti. Because he has this free will that he can do this surrender. So I allow myself to be lost in the thought. But usually I'm not conscious of that. Unconsciously, I'm doing this surrender to Prakriti. So the moment I become conscious that nobody else was forcing me, I was getting lost in the thought. With the same free will, I can reclaim the throne also. That I know myself as consciousness. And this will come later in these lines also, the next page. His pure transcendent force, that force which is beyond all and above all, has submitted to the nature of nature mother, to the Prakriti, to the movement in time. In the mystery of her cosmic ignorance, it appears that the movement of nature is ignorant, mechanical movement. But is it? We can't say that. We can't say that. It appears to be blinded, but there is a purpose. She knows what she's doing. In the mystery, that's why it's called, I feel that that's why he says that it's a mystery. In the mystery of her cosmic ignorance, in the insoluble riddle of her play. So many vast, scriptures after scriptures, masters after masters, avatars. So many avatars have arrived. Insoluble riddle of her play. And if it was so simple, although it is simple, and yet it is not simple at the same time. And that's why people have to spend ages, doing this tapasya and sadhana in order to have this stability in realization and also to do the work that is required of us. Insoluble riddle of her play. Such intricate riddle has been created. And then he continues. So we'll just go further because we just stopped in the middle of this thing. Yeah. Raviji, you want to read now?
A creature made of perishable stuff, in the pattern she has set for him, he moves. He thinks with her thoughts, with her trouble his bosom heaves. He seems the thing that she would have him seen. He is whatever her artist will can make.
Yeah. So he appears as a creature made of perishable stuff. All of us, all the sentient living beings on this planet and beyond, he appears as them. That who is immutable, imperishable, appears as a creature made of perishable stuff. Why? Because he allows the nature to be more dominant. He allows it. He says yes. A creature made of perishable stuff, in the pattern she has set for him, he moves. So he says, okay, you want to move this way? I will move this way. Acha, you want to move this way today? I will move this way today. So he allows himself to go in whatever pattern she wants to make him move. And when we say pattern, I also would like to connect it to our thought patterns, our tendencies, our behavioral patterns, the way we think, the way we feel, the grooves that are there in which we repeatedly find ourselves. Repeatedly, we find the same loop of thinking, the same loop of emotions coming again and again, overwhelming us. Why? Because the Lord himself has surrendered to Prakriti. But the Lord is all consciousness himself. So he has the free will to choose when he doesn't want to do that. So I allow myself to get ruled by the patterns of behavior, get ruled by the patterns of thinking. I am that consciousness which has surrendered to Prakriti. And it serves a purpose because it ripens me. Most of us won't be here if not for the blows and happenings of the life. Today we are reading Savitri only mostly because we have gotten so much of pain, which has made us think, that what is the purpose, why all this is happening? And then we seek for answers. So if those patterns were not happening, we first lose ourselves in the pattern, and then we slowly regain a conscious mastery over the patterns, and then things can happen in a different way. In the pattern she has set for him, he moves. He thinks with her thoughts. So whatever thought pattern is coming from my childhood, I will think about that like that. Whatever emotional pattern has been set from the past lifetime or the childhood or the adulthood, I exactly do that, as if I have no free will of my own. I forget that I have free will. That's why we feel suffocated when we are running through our behaviors and tendencies. We don't like it. He thinks with her thoughts, with her trouble, his bosom heaves. So if a thought is overwhelming, so much of pain, so much of misery, he allows that. He allows that play. Grieving, if I'm grieving, he allows the whole being to grieve. Maybe this is the way we go ahead. With her trouble, his bosom heaves. He seems the thing that she would have him seen. So he allows that, okay, you want to make me appear like maybe a criminal today. Okay, let me appear like a criminal. So much of free will is there. So far we can go. And we mostly make misuse of it, as human beings. That's where animals are above us, because they cannot go below an animal level. But human beings can go below even, the basic level set for us. Below even the animal level we can go. That's where we misuse our free will, and we suffer the consequences. And it's not anyone who is making us suffer. I am suffering because I am losing myself. I'm not knowing my true nature. The moment I choose enough, now I want to know who I truly am, the game changes, no matter how many sins I may have committed. He seems the thing that she would have him seen. He is whatever her artist will can make. So she is the artist, and he is the canvas. He has allowed himself to be the canvas. He doesn't say, no, don't throw too much of red color here. I don't like it. He doesn't say no. He says yes to everything. That's the beauty of awareness, that if there is a movement of anger arising in the being, and we notice the ripple of the anger. The moment I have a resistance against the anger, I say no to the anger, in the sense that, no, how can anger be there? How come you are here? I have, so many years of spiritual practice with me. Why are you still there? That's where our suffering starts. But when I know myself as awareness and I say, okay, anger, I see you there. There you are. There I reclaim my power. Then I can choose not to follow the ripple of anger. Because who am I? I am consciousness who has seen anger lurking around. So there self-mastery comes. So the thing with awareness, the thing with absolute consciousness is that it allows all to go as far as it can. That's why worst of happenings have happened on this manifestation. He is whatever her artist will can make. Yeah, let us read last few lines and then we'll stop after that. Yeah. Okay. Anyone who wants to read? Preeti, you haven't read. You want to read these lines if you have the capacity? Okay, so you're muted. I'm assuming you can't speak at the
No,
moment.
sure I can, but
Oh,
यहाँ पे थोड़ा Wi-Fi fluctuate करता है, but still
आप बोलो.
I'll go ahead.
Yeah.
So it starts from even, right?
Although
Those are the
she
ones or
drives,
yellow highlighted ones.
although she drives, page number
Okay.
65. Yeah.
Yeah. Although she drives him to her fancy's roads, At play with him as with her child or slave, to freedom and the eternal's mastery, and immortality stand above the world. She moves her seeming puppet of an hour.
Yeah, thank you. So although nature is dominant, she is ruling at the moment. She appears to be ruling and he allows the rule to be there. Although she drives him on her fancy's roads, at play with him as with her child or slave. She is having fun, basically, doing all this play. At times as a child, consciousness as a child, at times consciousness as a slave, because he allows himself to be the slave. At play with him as with her child or slave, to freedom and eternal. So what is it leading to? What is all this movement of nature leading to? To freedom and the eternal mastery, eternal's mastery. And immortalities stand above the world. She moves her seeming puppet of an hour. Beautiful lines again, that what is the purpose of all this getting tied in the movements of nature again and again? Ultimate movement, what really the nature wants to do is to make the soul consciousness come forward through all these nitties, gritties, little experiences and tying around and having the play, fun here, fun there, so that the soul consciousness regains its throne, exerts mastery over the nature itself, while so far she has been the master. So first the soul consciousness comes, like imagine that a candle light comes and hide itself in this black pitch darkness. It's hiding, covered with mind, covered with emotions, feelings, covered with physical darkness, physical, this dumbness, the matter. And then the play of the mass is going on, the play of matter is going on through this movement, that movement, so that the light that is hiding in the matter finally shines out with its full radiance and takes the throne and lights up all the movement of nature also. It lights up all the thoughts, lights up all the feelings, sense perceptions, become full of divinity. Although she drives him on her fancy's roads, at play with him as with her child or slave. So, now one can ask this question that at times it is so torturous. Now Purusha and Prakriti are having fun. Now who is suffering? Who is suffering? Because if the Lord is the only one that is there, then who says that, oh my God, Lord, I am suffering, save me? And this is the egoistic consciousness. That's why we talk about surrender again and again on this path, without which cannot happen. We cannot go forward. So the ego, which is a false sense of self, egoistic consciousness, that it appears that I am this separate individual, although it has a utility in evolution of consciousness, but after a certain period of time, it is not required. We hold on or cling to our egos too tightly. Once we have developed a good sense of self, after that, we don't require this holding on to our sense of separate self. That's what leads to suffering, that if a challenge comes from the universe, then I go through it, simple, keeping things very simple. But the ego says, oh my God, how could that challenge happen to me? Why are people so rude to me? So this is how we make things complicated. This is where we add too much of poison in our lives. So if we understand that this is the play of Purusha and Prakriti, where do I come in the picture? Who is this I? It says, save me, save me. So they are at play with each other. Mother is play with her child, or slave with his master. And now the nature's movements are leading so that the psychic being develops, in full maturity, ripens to freedom and the eternal's mastery. So I am now taking throne as knowingly knowing myself as consciousness. And the moment a thought or a ripple of feeling arises, I see it, but I do not lose myself into it. That's where I have the power. This is the inner freedom that we can have. I see it. Yes, the tendencies are there. Yes, the patterns are there. Because once the ball is set into motion, it takes few moments before it gets to complete rest. Those few moments may be a few lifetimes, who knows? But now I am not going to sway from being vigilant, knowing myself as this presence of consciousness within myself, which knows a thought, knows a feeling, knows a sensation, and is not moved by all the unnecessary drama all the time, not puppeted around. But this happens only after we have been a lot puppeted around, so that's what she moves her seeming puppet of an hour. So it seems like we are puppeted around, but that puppeting around also has a purpose, so that later on, as we go on our path, we attain this inner freedom, knowing ourselves as consciousness. Because knowing myself as the egoistic state, I cannot be free. I'll always be dependent and expecting, demanding, clinging. But knowing myself as the absolute, the presence of consciousness in myself, I am free. In that moment, I am free. But the thing is that it requires a lot of stability, because the moment next overwhelming thought may come and I may lose my ground again. I'll forget that I was consciousness. The thought will be so overwhelming. So that's where our practice or sadhana is required. And immortalities stand above the world. So the world is fleeting. The world comes and goes. Thoughts appear and disappear. Feelings come and disappear. Sense perceptions come and disappear. But who am I? I stand above as the immortal presence of consciousness within me. That's why masters in Hindi literature, in Hindi, they would say, if the master is really an enlightened being, they would give him the title of Udasin. In Hindi, usually we use this term as a sorrowful person. If I am udas today, that why are you looking udas? So I'm as if I'm sad today. But Udasin means standing a bit above all the drama that is happening. Because they have realized who they truly are. Now they can exert mastery. Now they can exert control over their thoughts, or even, external situations many times. Yeah. So I think I would like to stop here today as per the lines, but anyone who wants to share reflections, most welcome. Anything to add on? Okay, so I assume there is no further reflection. Thank you for joining. Everyone.
Thank you, Monica.
Thank you, Riddhi.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Monica.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Monica.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.